From the William B. Travis Building in Austin, Texas, we're keeping Texas energy on track. Here's your host, Bryce Doobie.
Welcome to Texas Energy on Track, the official podcast of the Railroad Commission of Texas. I am your host, Bryce Doobie, joined as always by our producer and co-host, Nick Cranock. Nick, how are you doing?
Doing great. Always good to be here, especially when we have these special episodes. It's something a little different, and they're always fun, so it's great to be back in here.
We are thrilled and honored to be joined today by the chairman of the Railroad Commission, Chairman Jim Wright. Sir, thank you so much for joining us today.
Bryce, it's a pleasure, and I really want to thank you guys for setting up this Energy Track thing. I think it's been very informative for our public. As you guys have put out a lot of information, I always enjoy listening what you guys are talking about and just saying what we have going on here at the Commission. So thank you for having me today.
Absolutely, sir. We appreciate it. I mean, kind of just want to jump into some of this. We know you we see you on letterheads, we see you in our open meetings and things like that. You've been with the Commission now a few years. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background with the Commission, and your role here, what you do.
Sure. My background has always been more environmental related. I've owned environmental service companies. I started my first company in 1991. Prior to that, I worked for a environmental services company in landfills and that kind of thing since the day I graduated high school. And then naturally, with that business, it was really hot back in those days whenever Texas and kind of the nation felt like we were running out of oil. There's not a lot of production going on during that time, but we were still doing refining. We still had utilities, so a lot of my business was more focused on that. And then again, when we discovered the shale and we started our revolution that we see in the oil and gas industry today around 2008, my business really started to articulate of doing more services oil field related during that time, and has been ever since. So I got very familiar with working with the Railroad Commission because a lot of my customers were requesting that I help them obtain permits from the Commission. And what I had seen is the industry was changing so much and so fast that the Commission wasn't doing necessarily a really great job of trying to keep up with that, although it was a big job to do, and that we needed to start looking at maybe changing some of the rules. So I actually got a task force involved to start looking at some of the rules here and to help the Commission to start setting up, if nothing else, guidance documents. That didn't work out so well, which is what drove me to run and consider being a railroad commissioner. So that's what brought me to the Commission originally. I've never been so happy in working with probably the best people I've ever worked with in my life since I've been here. We've made a lot of progress since my time here. We are starting to look at and focus on our rules and how those need to be changed so that we adopt to what's really going on today. So, it's been great.
I think it really is something that you touched on there, sir, just how much there has been just a change in the space here in Texas in energy in the past 20, 25 years or so. It really has transformed, starting with shale and really moving forward. And now we're seeing more with geothermal and all these different things. So it really has been an interesting time to watch the Commission evolve and grow as we've been moving just through all of this.
Yeah, that's been my biggest thing here is to make sure that we're staying in front of it, not behind it. And that's a big task. But I've been so amazed at how well the staff here has adopted to thinking that way, and what we've been doing, here recently, and looking at all the challenges that we see that come from the regulatory authority over that industry.
Now, this is going to be sort of a simple question, but I think it's probably a little bit more complex at the same time. As a commissioner, and you mentioned with staff, we know there's a Railroad Commission. Where do you fit in? What is sort of the commissioner's role when folks hear about the Railroad Commission? And we know that we have 3 elected commissioners here at the RC. What does a commissioner do?
I think everybody needs to understand that the Railroad Commission of Texas is a very unique agency. It's one of the very few that kind of run the way we do. We are directly elected here by the people of the state of Texas, and we put on many hats, a kind of a mashup of being judges, policemen, legislators, spokesmen. In some ways our job is similar to that of an appellate court judge, reviewing the decision of a lower court. We work the same way here, where we have administrative law judges that bring that to us as commissioners, and we look at those cases individually and decide on whether we feel like that was the right decision and the right path forward from what our judges are recommending. But we are more than that, because another big part of our job is again writing rules, essentially translating the laws written over in the Capitol into specific actions that oil and gas operators must follow, and doing it in a way that is workable.
Because that is interesting when we see things coming out of the legislature, and it'll be like the Railroad Commission shall do this, and then it's left to us to really work and figure out those next steps. So that is an interesting piece to everything. I think that doesn't always get a lot of attention to it on how all of that works. I think that's an interesting point as well.
Yeah, you get a bill that's about, sometimes as short as one page, but it really covers a broad, vast area. So creating rules around what the intent is there gets challenging sometimes. But, it's a process that involves not just the industry that it's affecting, but it involves everybody in Texas, and everybody gets a kind of a voice in that. And that's one thing I'm happy to see.
This year was sort of a change as well. You were named chairman. How does that role differ from your role as commissioner? What sort of works into that?
The mission is the same. That certainly doesn't change with the job title. There's no secret chairman's elevator or anything like that. So we're all equal, but sometimes somebody here has to hold the gavel, So that's about the only difference that you see in whether you're a chairman or a commissioner.
Now, when we're talking about all of this with rulemaking and all of these things, there really is sort of a balance, because you talked about with your background with environmental work and things like that. There's definitely a balance with really helping industry grow and prosper and be successful here in Texas and keep really the Texas miracle going forward, with also protecting our resources, protecting groundwater, which you know is so important these days. What's your approach with providing sort of that balance, and how do you view your role with as the commissioner with that?
I think that's what sets us apart from any other agency in the state. As I said before, we're elected officials, which are have 6-year terms, and part of our job here, if you look at our mission statement, is safety, protection of our environment. The third thing being making sure that we're always trying to obtain the economic vitality of those industries that we regulate. That's a big job. When you look at it that in that perspective, I find myself more trying to the guy that hears the concerns of everybody in Texas and making sure that we're acting on those concerns, and also making sure that we're upholding the industry and we're making sure that it has a clear path forward to provide the success it's been just for Texas. If you look at the oil and gas industry as an instance of one of the industries that we do regulate, the big, huge benefits that they bring for this state. So, a big part of our job is to make sure that we're always looking out for how the pendulum of politics swings, whether it's from a federal or state level, and we're always trying to keep things in balance no matter how that pendulum ends up swinging.
And sort of speaking to that, we know, Texas really is a leader, not just nationally, but globally. But how do you interact with other oil-producing states? Are there conversations? I know earlier this year you went to Alaska for IOGCC, and we accepted an award. How does that relationship work? Are folks coming to you all and being like, so what's Texas doing? What are you guys seeing? Or how is that conversation?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time interacting with other states, and a good platform to do that is the one you just mentioned. It's called the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, which I was appointed by Governor Abbott here a couple of years ago to be the state representative for that. That's an association where every state that has oil and gas can come together and have 2 or 3 days twice a year where we sit down and we talk about some of the issues that we have in our own particular states and how the federal government can also help us in challenging some of the things that each state faces. So it's really a great opportunity. It's more of a transparency thing to where every state kind of lays out, here's the issues that we're grappling with, and it strikes me sometimes because we're always real similar. It's a good thing because it brings a huge group of people together to where we can really talk about what's going on, how do we fix it, and we work on a pathway to fix that. I couldn't be more proud to be a member of the IOGCC. It's been really helpful. And then also, up until about a year ago, I was also the chairman of the pipeline committee for the NARUC, which is the National Association of Regulatory Utility and Commission. That's another one that's nationwide. All the states come together and we talk about pretty much all industry-related things that go through NARUC. It's been a great association for us to be at and to attend and give us more exposure to what other states are doing. I feel it's really important to be united with like-minded oil and gas states and for policy purposes, especially when dealing with our federal government or Congress or PHMSA, EPA, DOI, or any of those.
Because you mentioned there is always that pendulum swing that works back and forth with all of that. So in addition to like the states and things, federal policy really does have a direct impact on domestic oil and gas production. What's your experience really been dealing with federal counterparts on the EPA side, PHMSA, all those types of things during your time here at the commission?
As I said before, that pendulum really does swing. And I'm telling you, this last administration, prior to the Trump administration, it swung way out there. It was an interesting time for me for those 4 years. The truth be told, it's just kind of a mixed bag, and a perfect example of that is LNG export permitting. When the ban came in, we were really leading toward trying to put in the infrastructure because that was a great market opportunity for us to take gas that we would rather otherwise have probably wasted and have a market to send that to. And then all of a sudden it just halted, which there's a whole string of things that happened whenever that occurred, and now it's taking us a long time to try to overcome what that ban was. I can say it has really gotten a lot better with the current administration. They really understand, what we're doing and how to make sure those things are working well. Another example of what I'm dealing with today is during the previous administration to the current administration, the orphan well plugging program that came out in the IIJA bill. It allowed money to states to get a hold of, and the first tranche of money that we got, it really had no strings attached to it. We were able to go out and plug over 700 wells with that money immediately. The next tranche had a lot of strings attached to that. And in fact, I went to Washington, testified in front of a committee there, telling them that, if the goal here is to plug wells, the strings that are attached to this is not allowing us to do that. I mean, and to eliminate all the concerns that you have in wells that need to be plugged, the mission to me is to go out and plug the wells. That was pretty much the message that I gave to Washington during the previous administration. In fact, I had written an op-ed in the Washington Times, and this current administration has since changed those things to where now it's more practical. We have the ability to use that money to move forward in plugging wells without any type of inhibitions to that. But it almost looked like they took my op-ed and just slapped it over what the current regulations over that were.
And it's really been interesting to see that as all of that's kind of turned back on, and it's exciting. I know 2026 is going to be a big year for well plugging for Texas and I guess nationwide as well.
I think we're moving forward. This administration has come into, I guess I could say, a mess. It's been challenging for them to try to straighten that out. So it's been a little sluggish coming out of the starting blocks, but you're right. In 2026, I expect us to be full blast, full steam ahead.
And I mean, it's kind of speaking to all of that. I mean, how important in your view is really with commissioners, and you come with a background in business and things, understanding the business realities that are faced by producers and service companies, royalty owners, landowners, all of that, understanding those concerns really is a vital part of the job.
Yeah, by far, it's one of the most important things that need to be considered here. A mission at this agency, and one of the biggest things that we really have to sit down and consider is our mission portion, which is the economic vitality for the benefit of Texans. In oil and gas today, if you measure what that benefit is, it's over a third of our economy. It's not just that we have 500,000 people working directly in that industry, it's the salaries that those people are paid and that money and what that money is used for, buying cars, going to restaurants, renting hotels, a whole host of things that makes Texas work. So, it's very important for our success in Texas. And I can say today, Texas, I think, is the most successful state in the nation. You can see that through the evidence of how we're growing.
If you're thinking just really for this year, I mean, there has been a lot that has happened. I joined the commission in February of this year, and I feel like it has been a roller coaster ride of just announcements, and we've came out of a big legislative session. What have been the biggest wins for the RRC? And then I guess more broadly for Texas, if we're talking about energy this year?
I think the biggest wins that we've seen here lately is looking at what idle wells we have in the state and the orphan wells that we have on our list and what the plugging plan is for that. And legislation was very helpful in coming up with some legislation that kind of really laid out a pathway on how we're going to start to really make some headway on reducing those amounts of wells, properly plugging them. And then, the other thing that I'm really proud of that we've done here in this past year is we've opened up access and given public more engagement with us. I think that's very important. I think it helps go a long way in transparency, and I think it helps go a long way in explaining to people some of the conditions that we have to consider in the decisions that we make. And again, I think every answer in the solution to issues that we face, the biggest portion of that is communication.
One of the big ones that you've really been engaged on all of that is with petroleum theft, and that came out of with this legislature. They tasked us to create a task force here at the commission to take a look at what's going on with oil field theft and petroleum theft. Speaking to that, I know you've had your first meeting because you chair that as well. How big of a problem is the theft of petroleum and petroleum products here in Texas? Like, what are you hoping to do with this task force?
When I first heard about the bill that was going around in the last legislative session, I started asking questions about that because it really hadn't been brought to my attention all that much. And I can tell you, the answers I've been getting, it's certainly a bigger problem, and it's an important thing that we start to address now than I ever really personally thought it would be. It's more organized and pervasive than I initially ever understood. It's a problem for our state for several reasons. Number one, we are a law and order state, and we don't take kindly to theft, to put it in a Texas term. And number two, and equally, if not more importantly, theft of petroleum is theft of taxpayers' dollars per se, and those dollars and how they benefit us in Texas. And for every dollar lost in tax revenue is one less dollar that can go to other priorities. Or alternatively, it's one more dollar that could otherwise go back to our citizens in the form of property tax relief and all those things that we've been trying to do, or what our legislation's been trying to do to give people economic relief here in Texas.
Particularly with this Stop Theft Task Force, we've really brought in a lot of representatives from industry, from law enforcement, from all sorts of folks. I mean, it really has been interesting to see.
Yeah, we today on that task force have representation from the FBI, from the state level police that we have, our Texas State Troopers, and also from a local level, just the sheriff's departments throughout the state. All of those are represented on that task force, along with industry that's experiencing some of the theft issues that we're having.
Looking at another one that I know is really important to you, you've really championed long-term water needs in our state and the importance, just looking forward to the future of water usage and things. What role do you see energy producers in the oil and gas industry fitting into that? And why is this so important to both you personally? We know why it's important for Texas, but what really is the driver behind this for you?
Every time I think about water in the perspective of oil and gas, I look at that as a double-edged sword in the way it's existing today. And I knew 3 years ago, you can go out and look at some of the op-eds that I wrote, that water was going to start being an issue for us. And why do I say that? Because it was just around 2010 when we really got into full swing of drilling out what we call the new shale play. And in that, we have three things that come up whenever you're in that tight formation, and that's water, crude oil, and gas. So, if you look at crude oil and the production we have today, which is somewhere around 5.5 million barrels a day, we actually have 4 to 5 times much water coming up for every barrel of that. And it's coming from a formation that we cannot deliver it back into. In other words, we can't send the water back from where it came. And that became really obvious for me, quite a while ago, that I thought, there's going to be a day where you can start seeing some overpressurization issues because it's going to be really tough to fit 20 ounces in a 12-ounce bottle. And we started seeing them. We started seeing seismicity in West Texas, and we immediately pivoted to curtailment to stop that. And what the data showed is it was deep injection that was causing most of that. So naturally, our curtailment was we have to do something with this water. So it was to go into shallow. Well, shallows brings other issues also. It brings overpressurization to where potentially that eventually may find its way to our groundwater sources. And during the same time, I don't think I've had much of a rain since I took this office, which was 5 years ago on my ranch in South Texas. So we're experiencing the worst drought condition that I've ever seen in this state. And if you look at the volume of water, like I told you before, we're producing 5.5 million barrels of crude every day. So we've pretty much got about 30 million barrels of water that we're having to to re-inject. Well, 30 million barrels of water is a lot of water. I am very proud of what industry is doing now in looking, and the agency. I mean, we've taken, and we spend a lot of time. I talk about this every day. Every day. I was on an interview yesterday talking about the same subject. The industry today is really starting to pivot, to start looking at technology. We've got pilot programs working today to reuse that water for irrigation, reuse that water for aquifer recharge, or for surface replenishment. So, I'm excited about what that future is going to look like for us. I think that's what the future will be looking at whenever we continue expanding our oil and gas industry here in the state.
Yeah, it's been such an interesting topic to learn about this year, seeing the evolution. I know they're now looking, hey, maybe there's lithium potentially in some of this water. There's so many different applications.
Where it was before, the lithium opportunities to go out and drill their own wells, extract the lithium, and then re-inject the byproduct from it wasn't really economical. But whenever you talk about recycling that volume of water and creating impoundments that would hold huge volumes of that for pretreatment, then those lithium things really become economically viable. And I've had so many of them come through the office here at the Railroad Commission, thoroughly excited about that opportunity. And I think as we move forward in the future, you're going to see other minerals that they'll have the ability to extract out of that water. So, it's not just going to be a benefit to potentially reduce some of the drought conditions that we're experiencing, but I think it's going to be an opportunity for us to also capitalize on other types of minerals that would bring more revenue, for everybody.
Absolutely. It really is an exciting time for this whole space, whether you're talking oil and gas, whether you're talking some of these things with produced water and what they're going to be doing with all of that.
It is.
It's exciting. I remember when I first started this and they were like, well, why are you coming to us? Like there's a lot that's going to be happening here. Like keep an eye on Texas, keep an eye on what we're doing. Looking forward to this year. I mean, we came out of session. There's going to be some rulemaking and things. There's some, truly historic investments into the RRC this year. What do you see for the future? What are your goals moving forward for 2026?
Stop the task force and produced water are two of the big ticket items I think we're going to see moving into 26. I also look forward to our efforts to streamline, simplify, and expand our IT system when it comes to filings and reporting requirements. It may not sound really sexy when we talk about IT, but that not only frees up the Railroad Commission's resources from a staff perspective, it allows Texas energy producers to remain competitive in the global marketplace. I feel like we're making great strides in that, but IT is another one of those spaces that just seems to change overnight. So it's something that I've really focused on here of late to make sure that we can make it easier for people to navigate through and easier for people to go out and do business and make money and do it in a way that we can continue our goal, which is safely, protection of the environment, and more economic vitality of those industries.
Chairman Wright, is there anything else you would like to add for our listeners out there when they're thinking about the Railroad Commission and everything that we do here?
I can say in 2026 that people need to keep an eye on, because I think you're going to see a really aggressive well plugging program that we're going to be addressing coming up. I'm happy to see that we've gotten money, not just from the IIJA federal level, which now is obtainable and we can use, but we also have some money that was allocated from the state to take care of some of the problems that we have occurred in overpressurization. So all of those things are stood up. I think it's going to be a great thing for us moving forward. I'm excited what the future looks like, not just for the state of Texas, but for this industry in particular and our agency. And I'm very proud of what our staff has done here. Having this energy tracks thing that you guys are doing, I think is very informative. And I'm super excited to be here and participate in this. And I look at doing this again with you guys so that, I can least give the public the perspective of what I see.
Absolutely, sir. And we would love to have you back at some point. This has really been, this one kind of came out on us and was like, yeah, we should bring the chairman on. Like, that'd be great. So we really appreciate you coming here, sir. This has been a great opportunity to talk to you and kind of get it from the tower.
Thank you. It's been a huge pleasure. Thank you guys for doing what you're doing.
Nick, I think that sort of wraps up this episode. Again, we really want to thank Chairman Jim Wright for coming by and participating and talking with us today. It was a really good opportunity, and I hope our listeners got something out of that. It's always really good to see the insights from leadership here and see what kind of the future holds for everything.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, we appreciate the chairman for taking his time and coming on the podcast. And I'll transition into make sure you share, download the podcast. We're out there on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on YouTube, iHeartRadio. We make it easy for you guys to download. And when you download our show, you actually get notifications when we post a new episode like this one, which is going to be a very special one because we appreciate having Chairman Wright on our show. So when you download it, when you subscribe, you'll get those notifications. We make it easy for you. So make sure you check that out. Also, we are on social media on X. We are at TXRRC, Railroad Commission of Texas on LinkedIn and Facebook, and also at Railroad Commission of Texas on Instagram. We put out a lot of content on those social pages, not just the podcast, but a lot of information what's going on with the agency and throughout the state. So make sure you guys check that out.
And as always, if you want to find out a little bit more information about some of the different rules and things that we do here at the commission, as well as you can learn more about our commissioners themselves, you can go to our website at www.rrc.texas.gov. But that about wraps it up for this episode. Again, we want to thank Chairman Jim Wright for joining us this week, and we will talk to you all soon.